Under the dim golden light of the Corinthos living room, the tension in the air could have been cut with a knife. Willow sat cross-legged on the carpet, her hand gently stroking Daisy's fine hair as the infant cooed sleepily in her lap. It was one of those stolen moments, brief and precious, where motherhood felt unfiltered, authentic, despite the custody ruling that declared she had no right to even hold the child without supervision. But tonight, Willow wasn't looking for permission. She was looking for peace, a moment of connection she was told she didn't deserve, and that alone made her grip tighter, her defiance quieter but deeper than ever before. Earlier that day, Willow had taken Wiley to the park. Just the two of them, something that used to be normal, even encouraged, now relegated to a battlefield for legal threats and emotional carnage. They talked about nothing and everything. About school, about Daisy's funny baby noises, about clouds and ice cream and music. It wasn't until Michael found them sitting on a bench, Willow holding Wiley's hand with a tenderness he hadn't seen in months, that the quiet crumbled into chaos. Without a word, Michael stepped in, pulled Wiley away from her grip, and led him home with a stiffness in his shoulders that told Willow everything she needed to know. When he got home, he called her. His voice was cold and steady. If she ever tried to see Wiley again without his permission, he said, he would sue her for harassment, paint her as unstable, and use every legal means available to keep both children out of her life forever. That call broke something inside Willow. Not with a crash, but with a soft, silent click, like a door closing gently but locking firmly from the other side. That night, she couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. Her thoughts raced like wildfire. She got up, walked into Daisy's room, and picked the baby up with trembling arms. Willow brought Daisy to the living room, laid her gently on a cushion by the fire, and lay beside her on the floor, whispering stories she remembered from Wiley's infancy. It wasn't meant to be a protest. It wasn't a stunt. It was the only way she knew to feel like a mother again. In the dead of night, Sasha woke with a jolt. The house felt wrong. Quiet, yes, but it was the wrong kind of quiet. Instinct pulled her into motion. She rushed into Daisy's bedroom, her heartbeat pounding in her throat. The crib was empty. Blankets askew. No Daisy. She screamed. A blood-curdling cry that echoed through the house and spilled into the hallways like a storm rain. In an instant, alarms were raised. Michael burst into the hallway. Carly was already downstairs. Drew stormed in from the guest house. Within minutes, the house was a hive of panic. Even the police were called. Daisy Corinthos was missing. Neighbors were questioned. Sasha was inconsolable, shaking as she tried to explain what she didn't understand. She had put Daisy to bed. She was sure of it. Carly, trying to calm her, looked increasingly concerned as Sasha's answers grew fragmented, contradictory, frayed at the edges. Michael, consumed with fear, barely registered the growing implication that Sasha might be unwell. Not just overwhelmed, but mentally fractured. The whispers started that night. Among the staff, the neighbors, and eventually within the family itself. Postpartum psychosis. It was the explanation no one wanted to admit aloud but couldn't ignore. And then, just as the first rays of dawn pierced the horizon, a uniformed officer found the baby. Curled up peacefully in the Corinthos living room, tucked beside a throw blanket, cheeks flushed from sleep, unharmed. Willow, meanwhile, was nowhere to be found. She had slipped out of the house before anyone realized she had ever been there, leaving behind only the echo of her presence and a single note folded and placed beneath Daisy's head. She was never lost. She was only with her mother. The discovery stunned everyone. On paper, it made no sense. There were no signs of forced entry. No security breach. No intruder. The baby had simply been moved. And Sasha's credibility shattered in an instant. Everyone assumed she had done it herself. Taken Daisy out of her crib and, in a dissociative fugue, left her in the living room without any memory of doing so. Doctors were called. Appointments scheduled. Medications discussed. And as Sasha's world began to crack, Willow watched from the shadows, fury simmering behind her calm demeanor. She had never meant for Sasha to suffer. But now that she was being painted as unfit, part of Willow wondered if it wasn't an opportunity handed to her by fate. Meanwhile, across town, another storm brewed, this one under the roof of the Quartermain mansion, where Gio stood face to face with Tracy. The old guard, sharp as ever, had wasted no time warning him to stay away from Sunny. Tracy didn't speak in metaphors. She didn't traffic in veiled threats. She looked Joe square in the eye and said, "Stay away from Sunny, or your life may be the price." Gio didn't flinch. He had come to respect Sunny not as a myth or mob legend, but as a man who had sacrificed everything for family, who had shown Gio a version of strength he hadn't seen in the corporate coldness of the Quartermains. Tracy saw Gio as an impulsive liability. Sunny was a relic from a world of chaos, and anyone orbiting him would eventually crash. But Gio saw something different. In Sunny, he saw honor, flawed and bloodied, but still intact. He wasn't afraid of Tracy's threats. He was afraid of abandoning his convictions for the sake of safety. Gio had grown up watching people back away from conflict. He had seen how comfort breeds cowardice. He wouldn't be one of them. Not now. Not when he was just starting to understand who he wanted to be. If Tracy wanted to wage a war of influence, he would meet her on the battlefield, but not by walking away from the man who had treated him with more honesty than half the boardroom at ELQ. Back in the Corinthos house, the atmosphere grew thicker by the hour. Sasha, now under the care of a psychiatrist, had been temporarily separated from Daisy, for safety, they said. Michael didn't protest. He was too shaken, too exhausted to fight. Carly, ever the strategist, took over everything, from arranging Sasha's appointments to locking down media leaks. But it wasn't guilt that motivated her. It was control. Sasha's collapse gave her leverage. And Willow, watching this unfold from a safe distance, realized that the war she thought she had lost may not be over. In fact, it may have just begun. By midweek, Sasha was on medication and under 24-hour observation. Michael was torn, his heart breaking for a woman he wasn't sure he could trust anymore. Wiley grew quiet, sensing the shifts in the household. Even Amelia asked why everyone seemed to be pretending. And Willow, emboldened by the chaos, began to build her next move. She started documenting everything. Conversations. Mood swings. Missed medication doses. It wasn't manipulation, it was preparation. If they wanted to call her unstable, she'd show them what real instability looked like. She didn't want to destroy Sasha. But she wasn't going to let Sasha raise the daughter Willow had been forced to give up. Tracy, meanwhile, began to circle the Corinthos orbit again, curious about the effect Willow's sudden calm was having. She sensed a game being played under the surface, one with stakes that hadn't yet been fully revealed. And Gio, torn between loyalty and survival, stood at the center of it all, quietly navigating alliances with Sunny, defending him publicly even as Tracy questioned his every motive. In a town where everyone had something to lose, Willow had already lost everything that mattered. That made her dangerous. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just methodical. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted clarity. She wanted Daisy. And if dismantling the image of Sasha as a capable mother was the only way to do it, then she would let the world write that narrative while she sharpened the next chapter. And in the shadows of Port Charles, where loyalties shift with the wind and truth is rarely absolute, the baby who had once been lost, if only for a night, had become the epicenter of a quiet civil war. A war waged not with bullets or blood, but with perception, power, and patience. Willow was no longer just the grieving mother. She was the storm. And no one, not Sasha, not Michael, not Carly, was prepared for how far she was willing to go.